I didn't think that I would be making this video so soon, but I woke up seeing a bunch of headlines about Elon Musk's trans daughter, and as you can tell by the title, I went to school with Elon Musk's kid. At the time, his name was Xavier. Now the kid has renamed themselves to Vivian. This is going to be a really interesting video because I knew that I would always like eventually record this video because it's so interesting, but I didn't think that it would be this soon. I thought it would be later in my channel's development, but it came at this time because the headlines are happening now. People are talking about it on Twitter. A bunch of communists and Marxists, especially Marxists, are gleefully celebrating the fact that this kid is ostracized from her father, and that's really terrible. By the way, throughout this video, I'm going to probably refer to Vivian as a her and sometimes as a him just because I knew him. I knew the kid as a him at one point, and that's... you can interpret that as a political statement, but it's really not. I'm just not going to self-censor myself. So, as you can tell from the title of this video, I went to school with Elon Musk's trans kid. I want to show you guys these headlines, and then we're going to get into what I can tell you about the school Crossroads and what went on there and why so many people that go there become indoctrinated into radical leftists and how the entire scene works. Elon Musk blames elite LA school for brainwashing communist trans daughter. They didn't name the school in this headline, and most of you don't know the school. Elon Musk blames elite LA school for brainwashing communist trans daughter into hating him for being rich. This is so interesting for me to read because I went to this school, and they're not naming the school, but I'll name it. Crossroads is the school that it's in Santa Monica. Crossroads. It's a private school. It's really... I'll just say it for what it is. It's really elite. It's very expensive. The only reason I got to go there is because I got a scholarship for being really good at the violin. But this school is a school for the arts and sciences, but really it's a radical left-wing indoctrination ground. And there's a lot of positive things about this school, but I'm going to tell you everything. I am really excited to share this information, which is why I was excited to make this video when I knew that I eventually would make it, because what I'm about to share with you guys is a perspective that you will not get in any of the headlines printed anywhere on the internet by any news organization. I'm going to tell you what things are actually like at Crossroads, which is this private elite leftist school that they're talking about. And I'm just going to be honest. What I'm going to share with you guys is a look into an environment that most of you will never experience or never get to see, because it is actually very elite. And I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. I'm just saying that from a factual way. The things that I saw there surprised me. The prom that I went to was the same place that Drake had his birthday party. The cars that 16-year-olds were driving cost more than most Americans make in a year. There were very famous, high-status people that sent their kids there, like Elon Musk, but he wasn't the only one. Other billionaires sent their kids there too, celebrities, etc. LeBron James' son, Bronny, went to Crossroads for 1 year. Ewan McGregor, the actor that plays Obi-Wan Kenobi, I believe he sent both his daughters there. I knew one of them. So this school is a really interesting place that I was fortunate to experience as a result of the scholarship that I got, and I wanna tell you guys what it was like, given that you're seeing all these headlines and are probably curious. So in this video, I'm going to cover what Crossroads was like, what teachers were like, and associated with that, what the classrooms were like, what the parents of the kids were like, what Xavier was like, now Vivian, and what I believe happened to him/her given the environment that I'm going to describe. The first thing I want to say about Crossroads is that I don't only have negative things to say about Crossroads. I loved going there, and there are so many positive aspects of being there. In my view, the most positive aspect of Crossroads is the social aspect. It's the community. It's getting to know people. Each grade was only like 110, maybe 115 kids, and so it wasn't, a big school. And so as a result, you got to know everyone. You got to meet everyone. You knew everyone's name. And it was a great environment. There was a really good teacher to student ratio. So I don't only have negative things to say about Crossroads. I'm gonna make this a thorough video where I explain what happened. I feel like too, what makes this video very interesting is that apart from like my life experience, which put me here, I've also met Elon Musk as a result of my dad working at SpaceX. So I've met both Xavier and Elon Musk, which is very interesting, and nobody else will be able to give you this perspective. That's for sure. If you guys are curious, by the way, of why is this guy so based, and he also went to the school that he's saying is extremely left-leaning, it's because I discovered Jordan Peterson in 11th grade. That's the reason. I discovered Ben Shapiro, but I didn't really watch that much of Ben Shapiro. But really what it was is I was in 11th grade in an English class, which I'll tell you about later in this video. It'll come up. And my friend was sitting next to me, and he said, have you seen this guy? At the time, it was the Kathy Newman video where Jordan Peterson was abolishing Kathy Newman. And that was brand new. I watched it. And then I watched it again at home, and I thought to myself, what's going on here? Because for my entire life, I had been obsessed with truth, and that started a journey where I realized that the world of understanding truth went beyond the material world that science explained into the realm of value, and so I dived very deep into lectures Jordan Peterson had created, and so yeah, that's the reason. That's a large reason why I'm here able to do this and not some sort of woke leftist that's like, oh my God, I'm so glad that Elon Musk is not having a good relationship with his child because I hate billionaires. Like, that's not at all. And for any leftist that hates billionaires, I asked someone this before, because the college that I went to, there was this girl that hated billionaires, and she was in my anthropology class, and I said, you hate billionaires, but how many billionaires have you met? And she just looked at me like, what? And I was like, yeah, how many billionaires have you met? Because I've met multiple billionaires, and they're not bad people. And the ideology that they have is just to demonize any person that invalidates the categories of Marxist demonization. That's all they have. So let's get to the first question. What was Crossroads like? Crossroads was a school for the arts and sciences. At least that's what it says on the door, right? And each class was about 115 kids, 110 kids, like I said. My grade was really awesome. I knew everyone. I didn't know everyone well. I had a really great friend group. I was lucky to have a great friend group from day one. The ethos of Crossroads. It's a very open school because in between classes, it's not like a normal school where you stay inside all the time. It's the way it works is they have this outdoor area they call the alley, and you walk in the alley. It's not an alley, but it's a big outdoor space to go to all your classes. There's the English building, there's the library, there's the science building, there's, you know, the music building, there's the performance hall, and they had so every class you go to, you have to walk outside, and outside is the area that everyone spent their free time, in between classes or at snack or lunchtime. So Crossroads has this very, very open communal feeling. And like I said, with the community being small, there's this, it increases the feeling of this communal space. And it can be very positive. I had a great time spending time with my friends, both in the library and outside in the alley. For the most part, there was this feeling that you didn't have to conform to anyone else's standards. And that was a good environment for creativity. There were assignments and there were deadlines. Obviously, there were grades too, normal grades. But you call the teachers by their first name, which I'm told is very uncommon. I see that's sort of uncommon when I watch, you know, pop culture representations of what high school is like. People normally call their teachers Mr. or Mrs. We called our teachers by their first names, and that was encouraged. I would play chess sometimes with my world history teacher in the library, and it was so it's a different type of environment, right? And I felt like this environment really got the closest, maybe not the closest, but it got very close to promoting creativity and nonconformity, which I think is a really good thing that needs to be incorporated into most people's education experience. So when I say what Crossroads is like, which is the first part of this video, I also need to tell you what it was like for me. For me, it was dominated a lot by my music obligations there, because I got to go to Crossroads as a result for playing the violin. And so 3 times a week, I would be staying there until 5 o'clock, playing in their orchestra, their chamber orchestra. It wasn't a full orchestra, it was a chamber orchestra. And this was part of my obligation. I also had to take music theory. I say had to. I enjoyed taking music theory, mostly because of the other kids in the music theory class. Sasha, if you're watching this, shout out to you, bro. But the biggest part of my life at Crossroads was definitely music. And then outside of that, it was the friends that I made. It's funny, because what I've described so far sounds sort of like a leftist utopia, you know, a collective, oh, we're so inclusive, we care about feelings, all that. And so it's interesting for me knowing what happened there and the type of negative things that went on, to see how the degeneration of left-leaning presuppositions can deteriorate and make an environment into literal communist ideas. And so it's not just I've talked so far about the positives of the environment, but there's an underbelly. There's an underbelly to that. There is an underbelly to that. What the teachers were like. Okay, so the next category is what the teachers were like and what the classrooms were like. I've already spoken a little bit about what the teachers were like. They were very approachable for the most part. I liked 98% of my teachers. For the most part, you felt as though you could ask them anything, and they would be helpful. And there was that sort of expectation, too, where if they weren't helpful, then that was on them and not on you, which I think is that's a very, very enlightened perspective to have when you're a kid in education, and that's not a very common mindset. I think that should be promoted. What the classrooms were like, it would depend on the class. Some of the classes were in brand new buildings, like the science building. All the classes you had in science were amazing. For the most part, science and math were untouched from the radical left-wing degeneracy that was actually present at that school. Most of the degeneracy and left-wing communism and Marxism that I'm going to describe was really fostered in the English department specifically, and the social sciences, but mainly the English department specifically. So the sciences were basically untouched. I think probably, I don't know this for sure, this is just speculation, but Elon Musk actually came to tour the school before he sent Xavier there, and he took a tour of the science building, and there were pictures that people were sending around of Elon Musk touring the science building, just freaking out. But I think Elon Musk was probably impressed with the science. But I think Elon Musk was probably impressed with the equipment that they had in the classrooms there. They were completely decked out classrooms. That building had been finished, I think, only a year or two before I got there. So it was a nice building. Little did he know that they would be reading Howard Zinn and taught to hate America and taught that that the story of America is just an oppressive one, defined by power and oppression of the patriarchy. I don't think he knew that would be the case, but unfortunately, there was a push for Marxist ideas that, at the time, because you're only 15 or 16, you don't know why. You just trust the adults when they tell you we're going to be reading this book. You don't really question it because you don't know anything, and this is how they indoctrinate kids. They make you read Howard Zinn, and they act like it's normal to demonize every part of our history. They act like it's normal to say, we're going to read this textbook, but we're only going to focus on who has the power. They literally would tell us. I remember in 10th, 11th, even 12th grade, they would tell us, when we read this novel, I don't want you to focus, and these were great novels, and they would say, I don't want you to focus on anything other than who has the power in this story. And in 12th grade, I remember asking my teacher, why are we focusing on power when and I'd been watching some Jordan Peterson, so I was able to ask her, why are we focusing on power when competence is also part of the story, basically pointing out that power is not all of the story and that power is completely insufficient. And also, I would even write in my essays about how it's a postmodern neo-Marxist claim about the world that is actually erroneous. And I wasn't really penalized for that, I think, but you weren't able to ask questions about that in class. What the parents of the kids were like, this is where I think the school felt they had the license to indoctrinate the kids. I'm going to be honest. It wasn't just the school out of nowhere saying, we're going to just indoctrinate your children. The parents were ultra left-leaning liberals, liberal to ultra left-leaning, and they were pretty much all rich. So we're talking rich, ultra left-leaning people. For the most part, they were involved in entertainment. There were other private schools in Santa Monica that, had more business people as the parents, or, doctors or lawyers. The people that were the parents of the kids who went to Crossroads were either movie stars or entertainment people. Elon Musk and LeBron James, as a businessman and an athlete, were actually outliers. Most of them were involved in entertainment. And so that world of entertainment, especially in Hollywood, is really completely dominated by a left-leaning ethos. That's why you see the programming in Disney or HBO or anything else that you watch is left-leaning because it is expected to adhere to the left-wing agenda. And these people push the left-wing agenda and expect the left-wing agenda. There's sort of a mentality of, we are so much better, we are so much more enlightened than anyone else that we have an obligation to share our enlightenment, which is basically left-wing Marxism, with the rest of the world so that they can also be a part of our high and mighty way of living. This is the way they think. And for the most part, this, I think, is the reason why Crossroads was able to push such degenerate left-wing positions. And I wasn't a part of the communities. There were different communities. Even though it was a very progressive school, there were still cliques. They weren't super pronounced, but they were there. I wasn't a part of the cliques that were really into hating America, or the LGBTQ cliques that were really pushing and consuming Marxist propaganda. But I know that those cliques did exist, and that they would go down a rabbit hole of propaganda. And some of the classes were very propagandistic. I remember the highest level English class, they called it CAS English. It's basically their version of AP. It was literally selected by a quota. It wasn't based on merit who got in. And I remember thinking when that happened, this was before this was when I was still a blue pill sheep, leftist, liberal, blue pill sheep. And I remember thinking, that's kind of weird. Why aren't they basing it on merit versus they had a quota for it had to be exactly 50% girls and exactly 50% boys? And people were complaining about that. And I thought to myself, that's really weird. But again, it happened in English. It wasn't the case. They didn't have those quotas for math or science. It was only for English. And by the way, if you guys have any questions that I don't answer here, please feel free to answer them down below. And if it doesn't involve like literal names of individuals, I'll answer the questions, because I want you guys to understand what these environments are like, because they have this belief that they're better than you. They have this belief that they are more enlightened and deserve to essentially control everything. And it's very clear. And when you feel as though you're the good guys, because I was an indoctrinated sheep, when you feel as though you're the good guys, you think, oh yeah, that's fine. But then when you realize, hold on, these people are telling a very perverted, one-sided, incoherent story about reality that's actually wrong and murderous, considering that Marxism resulted in the death of tens of millions, that there's a very, very high cost to these people being so wrong and at the same time so unabashedly self-righteous with unearned counterfeit virtue. Saying counterfeit virtue, that reminded me, this might be a long video, that's fine. That reminded me of, at Crossroads, our community was about 88% white. And it was funny because they had this landing page, right, where the Crossroads website, and on the Crossroads website, they would always put the few people of color that were doing things. And it became a meme, where when you saw a photographer, they're like, oh, who are you taking a picture of? Because they pretended to be inclusive, but that speaks to their counterfeit virtue. They just wanted to virtue signal. It was all about virtue signaling. They were playing, at the time I didn't know it, but they were playing into the identity categories that Marxism has set forth in its transposition into the 21st century of sex, gender identity, gender proclivity, sexual identity, race, and all those categories, because they want a virtue signal. So yeah, that answers basically what the parents were like. They were in entertainment. They were, for the most part, very wealthy. And they were inclusive, but only inclusive if you agreed with their ideology. But it is... Okay, everyone was expected to adhere. The few people that didn't were ostracized immediately. And I don't even remember anyone really thinking truly differently. There wasn't true disagreement until I started watching Jordan Peterson. And then me and my friend were like subtly, silently like disagreeing, in all the classrooms. But and until then, everyone was essentially a mind slave. And so there was inclusivity, there was diversity, but only diversity of skin color, and only inclusivity of people that had different interests. There was no inclusivity of differences of opinion. There was no diversity of differences of opinion, because everyone was forced to think the same thing. Because if they didn't, then they weren't virtuous. So, yeah, I can tell you one thing. There was one moment in 11th grade that really stuck out as being openly ideological, and this was after I had been red pilled by Jordan Peterson, where this was when Kanye was touring right before his mental collapse. I remember the day he had his mental collapse because my friend was going to one of his concerts, and that's when his voice went out, and so he canceled the concert or whatever mid concert. But so Kanye West was super big, and my friend's little brother wore a "I Feel Like Pablo" shirt to school, and I think it was his math teacher. His math teacher told him, "You can't wear that." And nowadays, when that happens, like there was just that little kid that tried to wear that backpack with the patch on it, the flag that says "Don't tread on me." We literally had that, except it didn't go viral. It should have, but it didn't. Where he wore his "I Feel Like Pablo" shirt, and he got it at Ye's concert, and his math teacher told him not to wear it. And I was like the second or third person that found out about this, and by lunchtime, the entire school knew that there was like this ban on Kanye West merch. And it was so funny because they had to hold an assembly to say actually, guys, there's not a ban. But the thing is no one believed them, because it was exactly the sort of thing Crossroads would do to ban Kanye West to ban Kanye West merch. So what happened is the next day, despite there being, an assembly saying we're not going to ban anything, that nothing is banned, everyone wore Kanye West merch. Everyone was wearing Yeezys. It was funny because it's so quintessential Crossroads. All these rich kids, they were wearing, dude, I Love Pablo shirts were everywhere. Everyone was wearing Yeezys. Dude, it was really, really funny. Because everyone wore Kanye West merch for like a week. But that gives you some idea. Crossroads is so left-leaning that it would have opinions like that, where teachers feel they could openly say, how dare you wear and I can't even imagine if someone wore a MAGA hat. Oh, but dude, if you wore a MAGA hat, you'd probably get expelled. I don't know for that for sure, of course, that's kind of a joke, but you definitely would be ostracized, you would definitely be socially punished, and you would definitely be a bad person because you wouldn't hold inherent virtue. And before we move on to the next category, I'm going to give you guys an anecdote of what happened in an English class that was so absurd and clearly motivated by a need to indoctrinate young kids with Marxist belief. My teacher, she literally said, we were analyzing this book. It was about how like racism was bad or something, or it was a book about racism. Very weird, but we had to make, it was strange, we had to make everything about race in this book. We had to analyze everything for race and racism, and it's like you got extra points if you could point out how something was racist. So everyone was looking for any type of way they could stretch something to be racist. And it got to the point where people were contributing things, and the teacher said, the paper is white, the paper of this book is white, and the words are black. And so this is signifying racism, where whiteness is superimposed on blackness and blackness is forced to exist on whiteness. And at this point, I had already been listening to some Jordan Peterson, and my friend, again, who's sitting next to me, I won't say your name, bro, but just, yeah, you know who you are. We were looking at each other like, dude, she literally just said paper is racist. And that's the sort of environment that Crossroads can get to, where they're so obsessed with wokeness that they end up being crazy. They end up being absolutely insane. So yeah, okay, moving on. The next category. What was Xavier like at the time? His name was Xavier. Now his name's obvious, or her name is Vivian Jenna or whatever. And what I think happened to him / her. But let's be real, it's a him, right? Okay. I'll say this. I had a family member who went to Elon Musk's school. So before high school, before 9th grade, Elon Musk made a school for his kids and for a few other kids, and that's a school they went to. It was a school that Elon Musk made for his own kids. And someone in my family went to that school, and so I knew of Elon Musk's kids. I knew I knew of the triplets. I knew of Xavier before he went to Crossroads. And so when he showed up at Crossroads in his 9th grade year, when I was in 12th grade, I recognized him. And for a while I observed him at a distance, sort of like everyone else did, because everyone was like, "Oh my God, that's Elon Musk's son, right?" And I only observed good things. I mean, he seemed like a really great kid, and he was very the school Ad Astra that he had gone to up until that point was essentially the most elite education that you could possibly receive on the face of the planet. I'll just be honest. There's literally no way of outdoing it. I saw what went on there. It was next level. Elon Musk literally got the best mathematicians to teach mathematics to his kids. He got one of the best lawyers in the United States to come give a lecture about law. You get the point. He got the best people in the world to do every single class, right? So this kid was very impressive. I saw him walk up to the librarian, and the librarian was friendly, but I saw him walk up to the librarian, and he just asked her for help in a way that was even more like as if they were on the same level than you ever see anyone else speak to an adult. And it wasn't disrespectful. It was enlightened. It was like, wow, because you never see a ninth grader do that. They're kind of nervous walking around. Even they're nervous around the upperclassmen a little bit. But he just walked right up to the librarian and said, I need help with this. Can you help me with this? And by the way, I have this idea. And, he was just very vocal. And I remember being impressed with that and thinking, wow. So later, I was sitting in the library, and he came up and sat down at the same table. And so I started talking to him because I'd never spoken to him directly before. And I ended up talking to him for about 15 minutes. Maybe it was longer. I don't exactly remember. But what stood out to me was that he was very cheerful. This is right when this was in his 9th grade year, before his hair got long, before he became a girl, before he became indoctrinated. And when I spoke to him, he was really cheerful. He was very happy, and he was impressive. His vocabulary was almost at the level of mine. His vocabulary was, which is exactly what I would have expected, him coming from Ad Astra. And at one point in the conversation, I asked him, what is it like having Elon Musk for a dad? And he seemed a little bit surprised when I asked him that. And he had to think for a second. Because remember, at the time, my dad is literally working for his dad at SpaceX, right? And Elon Musk had completely changed my family's life. That was the reason why we were able to move to Los Angeles, live in that area. So Elon Musk was a really big person in our life. And so I asked him, what is it like having Elon Musk for a dad? In a way that was clear that, I was very impressed with Elon Musk. And he wasn't taken aback or offended, but he was a little bit surprised. And I remember him saying something like, I don't get to see him that often, or something like that. He indicated to me that he didn't really get to see Elon that often. And I don't remember what we talked about for the rest of the conversation. Sooner or later, I had to go take a test in the testing center. But knowing what went on at Crossroads and all the things that I've described before, I believe I can tell you what happened to Vivian, Jenna Wilson. And it's sad, and I think it speaks to the failure of the left to know when it goes too far. Because as I've described, the left can create an amazing environment, such a magical space where people feel as though they're part of a collective and it's fun and interesting. But it can go too far where you are taught to hate the patriarchy, to hate America, to hate the frameworks that have literally built the environment that makes this world possible. All of your parents that became rich in order to pay for you to go there did so in a capitalist system where they could offer value and get rewarded for it. And so these people are taught to hate the very framework that makes their life so easy and miraculous. For the most part, besides one OG teacher, which was absolutely incredible, everyone loved that guy. Everyone was taught to hate America, either subtly or overtly. I mean, we read Howard Zinn. We were taught that the story of America is essentially a story of people oppressing other people. Again, there's that element of power where we're taught to say, okay, There is nothing but power that mediates the relationship between people, which is so absurd because in that environment, it was clear to everyone that there's obviously so much more than power. I mean, for God's sakes, we got to call our teachers by our first names. We got to, talk with them as if they're our equals. The dynamic between people obviously isn't mitigated by power. They're the ones that decided what our grades were. They had more power than us, but that didn't like dictate our relationship. So on its face, it was absurd, but we were still taught to say, there's nothing but power. And now, looking back on that entire experience, I can recognize what that is. That is a Marxist presupposition, where in Marxism they are required to say there is nothing but power mediating the relationships between people, because the only thing that exists between people is power disparities that result in oppression or victimization. So there's only a victim and a victimizer. Because in Marxism, the victim gets to claim virtue as a result of being a victim. That's why they have the Victimhood Olympics, where they try to say, oh, I'm more oppressed than you, and they set all these categories to define their victimhood status. Guys, Marxism was transposed from the 20th century into just being about economic disparities to the 21st century, where it's not just about economic disparities, it's also about race, gender identity, sexual proclivity, and every other way you can possibly divide people, which is an infinite number of ways. So they divide people based on what? Based on power, because that's what we were taught. And so we weren't taught that by accident. Looking back, I know that we were taught that because that is a Marxist presupposition, and they were literally teaching us to become Marxists. They were literally teaching us to demonize capitalism, demonize the patriarchy, demonize the notion of objective truth in and of itself, because that's woven into postmodern belief, where there is no objective way of viewing the world because there's an infinite number of ways of viewing the world. But of course, that's not true, because even though there are an infinite number of ways of viewing the world, there are not an infinite number of coherent ways of viewing the world. As Jordan Peterson said, I can't pick up this glass with the back of my hand. So if I think that it is equally valuable to pick up the glass with the back of my hand versus the front of my hand, I will be at a disadvantage. So yeah, it's very, very obvious. But so what happened to Xavier? He was taught by Marxists in the English department to hate capitalism, to hate objective frameworks, to hate the patriarchy, to hate basically impressiveness, because impressiveness has objective parameters that play into all of those categories. And so who does that quintessentially define? It defines Elon Musk, his father. And now we're reading headlines where he's refusing to spend time with his father. He calls his father, it's so ungrateful considering Elon Musk literally provided the greatest possible education. I know what happened at Ad Astra, and it was the greatest education you could possibly fathom. It was multiply your greatest imagination of what education could be, then multiply it by 5. It was crazy. It's so ungrateful, but you're reading the headlines. He refuses to spend time with his father. He demonizes his father as a billionaire. Like, it's totally preposterous. But the reason is because the English department at Crossroads teaches people to be Marxist. It teaches people to hate objective reality. It tells them to only analyze the world in terms of power, when that's completely insufficient and a incomplete story of reality. There's not just power, there's competence, which speaks to meritocracy. People aren't just in their positions because they crushed someone else to get there. They competed with other people. For the most part, people's positions in society are a result of their competence. Someone worked hard to be there. I worked hard at violin, so I got to go to Crossroads, because I was good enough to get a scholarship. People don't just oppress others to get there, to get places in life. If that was the case, then society would be way, way, way more unstable than it currently is. But that's not what people are taught. And at a young age, there is no way to know. There's no way to know that you're being taught propaganda. And unless you're like militantly inquisitive like I was and obsessed with the truth, then you're probably never going to break out of what you're taught at that formative age. And you can see, he was enraptured with the leftist ideology to the point where he thought, I need to become the ultimate victim in order to obtain ultimate counterfeit virtue. And so he became a woman, because the trans people, there was a trans kid when I was at Crossroads, and the trans is at the bottom of the victimhood pyramid, right? Because they're the most oppressed out of anyone, so they get to claim the most amount of virtue. So when people observe this, they can get they can get sucked into this ideology that tells them you only get your virtue, you only get your status as a person, you get your entire identity as a result of giving up your identity to the left-wing ideology. And if any young people are watching this, understand that that is a murderous, horrible lie. Marxism is driven by resentment. It's not driven by compassion. It's not driven by inclusivity. You get to see this anytime someone speaks out. They're not actually inclusive. They're extremely discriminatory and uninclusive because they're not tolerant of of differences of opinion. I remember trying to disagree in 11th or 12th grade, and you would immediately get shut down by the teacher, even if you were like posing slightly different viewpoints about a narrative. It's like, no, this has to be about power. No, this must only be about victimization. I remember one time in English class, it was the same teacher that had said that paper was racist for being white. She was saying that women are more likely to be victims of physical assault than men. And I raised my hand saying that's actually statistically untrue. Men are the victims of violent assault 72% of the time. And she cut me off like right as I was getting to the end of that sentence, and just didn't let me finish. So yeah, you're not allowed to disagree. You're not allowed to have a difference of opinion, and that is a clear example of how the left goes too far. Also, you can see how the left goes too far when they demonize meritocracy, when they say that we need to have equality of outcome. Because saying that we need to have equality of outcome, which is essentially equity doctrine, is the same as saying that there's no such thing as meritocracy. Because if you accept the idea that people compete for merit, then you're never going to have people end up at the same place, because people are going to be better at different things. Someone's going to be better at drawing than I'm at drawing, and so to put us both at the same playing field, saying we have to have the same outcome in terms of our drawing ability, or it's evidence of oppression, just tears down the other person that's better at drawing than I am. Or if I'm better at math and science than someone else, and the result is that's a result of oppression. It's like, no, I'm just better at math and science than this other person. You see what I'm saying? So the left clearly goes too far, and this was my first real acquaintance with how the left could go too far, because they just sort of Crossroads had this dark side. It had this dark side, and it was stemming from Marxism in the English and social sciences in that department, and it was very, very sad. But this is what happened to Xavier, and it's super clear that also as Elon Musk was becoming more famous, because in 2014, 2015, 2016, he was gaining popularity. He became the face for masculine competence in what? In meritocracy. In the meritocracy of capitalism. As he was becoming one of the richest people in the world, and then the richest person in the world, that is also elevating his oppressor status, right? So his oppressor status is going up because he's becoming more objectively impressive. It's the same reason people demonize Andrew Tate, by the way. They see, he's clearly impressive and universally adored by extremely hot women, and men respect him, so he must be a victimizer. He must be an oppressor because he occupies this high status. He must have oppressed other people. No, he's competent, you see? But they don't have any space in their worldview for any of that. It's really weird to see all these headlines, all these articles like Insider and Fox News and the New York Post writing about this. Because I feel bad for Elon. I do, because he doesn't understand what he did sending his kid to that school, and it must be horrible. Because think about it, imagine you're one of the most impressive men on the planet, doing more good for humanity than anyone else by creating electric vehicles, revolutionizing the space industry, and protecting free speech online, and then your kid won't talk to you because they were indoctrinated by some overpaid high school teacher that was obsessed with Foucault. It's horrific. But I mean, again, you're not going to know any of this information you're not going to learn any of this information just by reading this, because they're not going to be telling you what it's like inside Crossroads, and I can do that. And guys, if you have more questions about what it was like, ask me in the comments and I'll answer, because I'm sure that you have questions that I didn't cover in this video, even though I'm trying to make it thorough, and I'll answer them. I wasn't expecting to make this video soon, but here it is. Elon Musk blames elite LA school for brainwashing communist trans daughter into hating him for being rich. Yeah, well, blames is such a silly thing. They're trying to say that this is unjustified, but it's not unjustified. It makes complete sense. Also, look at this image that they're purporting of Elon Musk. He never wears a tuxedo, and so the only picture they have of him is wearing a tuxedo. Of course, he has to be the big bad quintessential oppressor of the little guy. It's so pathetic. There were definitely communists at Crossroads, and but they weren't that vocal, because people understood that their school, I think people understood that their parents were impressive, at least in some way. And so most kids, I think, were hesitant to be openly communist. But I think if you're bombarded by basically people reminding you that your dad is extremely impressive and therefore invalidating the ideology that you're being fed, that's telling you that your identity itself, your very identity, is wrapped up in whether or not you're a victim of the patriarchy and capitalism, then you can be pushed to becoming a communist and a trans person. It's very clear. Xavier was pushed from having a dream life, a dream existence, a dream education and background, into trying to embody the most oppressed class of person on earth just for counterfeit virtue, just because they were told a false story about reality. And it's horrifically sad. It's very, very sad. But hey, at least this isn't all of Elon's kids. He has like 8 other sons or whatever. I don't even know at this point. He has a lot of other sons. Who is this woman? I don't recognize this woman. Maybe like a nanny or something. Oh, that's so weird, bro. This picture's so weird because I've seen this face, but as a boy, like with short hair, like straight up a boy. Now the long hair. Gosh, that's brutal, bro. That's brutal. Here you go. This is Crossroads right here. So this is outside of, this is the music building over off to the left, and then this is the middle school. The upper school, so the high school where he went and where I went, is over more off to the right from this photo. Let's see if they have other photos. Oh, okay, this is funny. New York Post. Okay, the New York Post is a little bit based, right? So tuition for the alleged communist K through 12 ironically costs up to $50,000 per year. Yeah. Actually, it costs, I'm going to be honest, it cost more than that even when I was there. Again, I had a scholarship, but when I was there, I think they were charging about $56,000. So it was more than that. Oh man, that's brutal, dude. Okay. I want to see what the more left-leaning sites are saying. The Daily Mail is based. The New York Post is based. Something I don't know that I would be interested to know is who groomed Xavier into being trans, because a young kid doesn't choose to do that. I wonder if it was a social media algorithm or if it was an actual person at Crossroads. It might have been an actual person at Crossroads. I have a few ideas, but I can't know for sure. Some of the English teachers were really like openly left-leaning, like very, very far left. Again, liberals and leftists have not integrated an understanding of what it means to go too far on the left, and that's eating them alive. It's completely destroying their positions. Why are they calling him the billionaire father? Why aren't they calling him Elon Musk? Everyone knows he's a billionaire. The reason is because they know that that is a buzzword for bad guy. It's a buzzword for supervillain. Oh, you're a billionaire, you must be a bad person. All these people that say billionaires are bad people have never met billionaires, bro. I've met multiple billionaires, and none of them are supervillains. They're actually nice people. So weird, dude. So fucking strange. Elon Musk's daughter came out as transgender to her aunt. Interesting. Elon Musk's daughter cut all ties with her father because of his anti-trans stance. No, it's not an anti-trans stance. He has a pro-reality stance. You cannot change your sex. It's impossible because science is real. But see, these leftists don't actually care about science. Musk revealed that the separation from his daughter is the second most painful experience he had. Wow, that's very difficult. That's very, very difficult and sad. I wonder if Elon Musk will see this, because he deserves to know what happened at Crossroads, what it was like there, and what happened. I need to talk about the kind of the dark side of their extreme obsession with left-wing philosophy and social justice. We had what we called assemblies, where the entire upper school, 9th through 12th grade, all got together either on the basketball court or in the auditorium and would listen to what were essentially lectures by various people on topics like police brutality or microaggressions or like subtle discrimination. And I'm sure they still do this, but they have assemblies. We had an assembly when I was in 10th grade. This was super famous because our entire school was talking about it for months. It was really unpopular, actually. It was a lecture that took pretty much the entire day, and it was on microaggressions. They brought in this guy to talk about microaggressions for several hours. And at the time, I was a blue pill liberal sheep, and I just went along with it. I was like, yeah, microaggressions are really a problem. People are microaggressing each other, and this is actually holding back civilization. You know, forgive me. I discovered Jordan Peterson in 11th grade, okay? You can't have... You can't know everything, all right? But they would have these essentially indoctrination seminars into left-wing ideology that were mandatory. These assemblies were mandatory. You had to go. And so this is sort of a preemptive look at the of this extremely liberal leftist environment. To have a truly functional environment, I mean, if you were to just extrapolate this, microcosm of Crossroads out to the entire civilization would immediately collapse, which goes to show that would immediately collapse, unravel, and people would just be obsessed with incoherence. So it really goes to show that there has to be a dialogue between the right and the left to create a stable society. But there wasn't that at Crossroads. We had only one story. America is the story of oppression. Howard Zinn, we were oppressors. We have we go to lectures on microaggressions. We go to lectures on feminist doctrine. We read Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson in 11th grade as if it's an account of what justice means in America. They're telling a one-sided story, trying to be progressive, but really what they're doing is promoting a deep, deep hatred for essentially everything, for all of society's objective parameters, for truth itself, because the mechanisms that reveal truth, like logic or reason, reveal their ideology as incoherent, and their ideology just disintegrates under the weight of rational scrutiny. That's the reason, by the way, why Marxism protests, when combined with postmodernism, protests the notion of an objective truth even existing. It's no coincidence. The reason they do that is so that they aren't held accountable. In 2021, one of Elon Musk's children, Xavier Musk, filed a request to change her name in accordance with new gender identity. Okay, this is interesting. So I spoke with Xavier in 2019. So 2 years later, so he was in 11th grade. So it only took 2 years at Crossroads, coming from the most elite education you could ever fathom, to only 2 years to becoming transgender. That environment must be extremely... Okay, very, very predatory. I wonder what the teachers were telling him about his father, because they were definitely learning that billionaires were bad people, that they were, evil or whatever, which is really strange, because there were probably people in that class whose parents were billionaires. She expressed a desire to disassociate from her biological father in every possible way. Wow, that's definitely someone's influence. That is not what a normal kid does. Now a new assertion by Musk's biographer, Walter Isaacson, in an excerpt from his book titled Elon Musk, published in the Wall Street Journal, suggests that Musk's daughter informed her aunt about her gender transition, but asked her not to her father about it. Okay. Since then, Musk adopted a strong anti-woke stance as a result of his child's gender transition, as he should. As he should. I remember when Elon Musk toured the school. I was actually sick, and people were sending me pictures of him at the science building. I was like, oh man, if I wish I was there. But he definitely had no idea, because knowing, yeah, Elon would not. Oh my God, so bad. The excerpt from the book reveals that Musk's then 16-year-old should not be able to consent to transition. That's horrific. So horrific. Oh my God. According to the book, Musk calls his daughter a communist and believes she broke off her relationship with him because she was influenced by her school in California, which cost more. Yeah. Hey, honey, I'm literally paying $50,000 a year, the average salary of the average salary in America, so that you can be indoctrinated to hate me. Dude, it's so quintessential. It's so quintessential leftism. Just deep incoherence. Let's see what CNN is saying. I bet they're demonizing Elon as big bad rich man. Big bad rich man is bad. Elon Musk's child tells court she no longer wants to be related to her dad. One of Elon Musk's children has petitioned California court to recognize her new. Dude, okay, this is so ungrateful. I can't imagine being this ungrateful. I am proud of my last name, and I've told my father and I've told my grandfather I'm going to do my absolute best to carry on our last name. I can't imagine having your last name be Musk and to be so ungrateful that you would seek to change your name. That is like next level ungratefulness. One of Elon Musk's children has petitioned a California court to recognize her new name and gender, saying she no longer wishes to be related to her famous and wealthy father in any way, shape, or form. She's taught to demonize masculinity, the patriarchy, capitalism, and truth as a result of that, probably. She no longer wishes to be related to her famous and wealthy father in any way, shape, or form. Musk's daughter turned 18. Xavier made the filing. Oh, gosh, dude. This is so funny. People can't understand the joke. For example, in December 2020, he posted a tweet since deleted that said, "When you put he/him in your bio alongside of drawing a picture of an 18th century soldier running blood on his face in front of a pile of dead bodies wearing a cap that said, 'I love to oppress.'" See, that's making fun of the left for being absurd, because no one would do that, right? But gosh. So here's the alley. This is what I referred to as the alley before. This is the library. This building that you're seeing right here is the library. And then this building next to it is the English department. So this is the indoctrination ground that I was telling you about. As if you couldn't get even more Santa Monica, the building right next to this one is a dog, like, training, wash, grooming center where people pay too much money to have their dog, like, it's like a daycare for dogs. It's crazy. People, if you move to California, there's a meme where people like to, people take their dogs with them everywhere. Guys, this is a look inside an environment that most of you have never seen anything like. So this is pretty interesting. I hear he's super tall now. He was always tall, but I remember I was actually a bit taller than him when I saw him there. But he's obviously taller than me now. So this is a look inside the situation that you're not going to get anywhere else. And if you like this, please subscribe, like the video. Leave a comment. I love reading the comments. I appreciate everyone who supports and subscribes. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments and I'll answer it. I will get back to you. I thought about showing the Twitter accounts that were gleefully celebrating the fact that Elon's daughter is estranged from him, but I'm not going to do that because they're just bad people, and that's self-evidently immoral to any thinking person. Plus, those people don't know Elon or Xavier, and they're basically just using this as an ideological hack. So they're very just dishonest people. If you guys like true honesty, then you should subscribe, because I'm going to dedicate complete honesty and truth to everything that I do. It is really disturbing. And maybe I'll end here where I say it's really disturbing to see that instead of debating, what the radical left does is it just demonizes people based on their group identity that they claim their opponents inhabit as a result of their leftist ideology. To them, people are either oppressors or oppressees. And depending on your status, you're either a good or bad person. And if you're someone who doesn't agree with them, then you're deplorable. You're in the other basket. You aren't them, and then they discriminate against you. And it's very, very disturbing and worrying to perpetually see the lack of intellectual scrutiny, intellectual honesty. There's not even a modicum of intellectual self-respect. It is only blatant demonization in order to say, I'm going to say you're a bad person so I don't have to contend with what you have to say. And that's not a debate. That's not how investigating ideas work. And if society adopts that mode of operation, that modus operandi, and if society adopts that modus operandi, then all of civilization could take on the degeneracies of what Crossroads is, because Crossroads didn't allow there to be dialogue. Dialogue was shut down and people were demonized as a result for disagreeing with the radical left. And if there can't be a dialogue using free speech as the medium to facilitate the dialogue between the right and the left to create a better future, then the future is going to collapse. And if the radical left isn't confronted for saying you're a bad person because I disagree with you, if we don't say, hey, that's immoral, that's wrong, that actually makes you the bad guy, that actually makes you the tyrant, that makes you the intolerant ones because you're not tolerant of dissenting viewpoints, if we don't do that, then society is going to continue to suffer, and it may take centuries to recover mentally sane frameworks. So with that, I'll end this video, and I thank you all for watching. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment. If you disagree with something I said, leave a comment. If you support what I'm doing, leave a comment. And I'll see you guys in a future video.